Aries, let me ask you something. Have you felt it lately? That strange shift. That quiet pull you can't explain. Because someone connected to your energy hasn't been sleeping well. They're replaying moments, words they didn't say, choices they didn't make. They thought they could walk away. They thought distance would make it easier. But the truth is, they're waking up now. Regret doesn't arrive loudly. It comes in waves, late at night when pride finally cracks. And Aries, this isn't random. This isn't coincidence. Before we go deeper, pause for a second. Check in with your body. Your intuition already knows why you're here. If this message is finding you, there's a reason. Stay with me, because what's unfolding next changes the entire story. Aries, listen to this the way you would listen to a close friend who lowers their voice, because what they are about to say is real. There is someone in your life or from your past who is no longer distracted by noise. No longer numbing themselves with motion, no longer hiding behind busy days and empty confidence. What they are experiencing now is not dramatic, it is quiet, and that is why it is powerful. It happens in still moments, when the room goes dark, when the phone is face down, when there is nothing left to outrun. That is when memory starts speaking. They are replaying the times you showed up and they did not. The moments you waited while they hesitated. The care you offered while they kept their distance. And Aries, this is the part that matters. They are no longer rewriting the story to make themselves the hero. They are finally seeing it from your side. Not with blame, not with excuses, but with clarity. Regret does not always look like sadness. Sometimes it feels like restlessness, like something unfinished pressing on the chest, like knowing you crossed a line and time kept moving anyway. They thought avoiding the truth would make the feeling fade. But avoidance only delays awakening. It never cancels it. So now everything they push down is rising. The connection, the bond, the version of themselves they were when they were with you. And here is something important for you to hear. This awakening did not begin because you chased or explained or proved your worth. It began because you stopped. You chose yourself. You withdrew your energy. You let silence speak where words no longer worked. That silence was loud to them. It forced reflection. It forced honesty. It forced them to sit with the one thing they had been avoiding: their own responsibility. Aries, this is not about someone suddenly realizing they miss you. This is about someone realizing they lost access to something rare. Your presence, your fire, your loyalty when it was real. And while they are sitting in this awakening, questioning choices, questioning timing, questioning themselves, you are standing in a different place. Stronger, quieter, clearer. That is why this moment matters. Not because they are waking up, but because you no longer need them to. Before we go any further, take a breath. Notice how your body responds to this truth. There is a reason this message is unfolding slowly. There is a reason the energy feels heavier and softer at the same time. Because the next layer of this story is not about what they feel. It is about what happens when someone who once ran realizes you are no longer standing where they left you. And that is where everything begins to change. Aries, let me say this gently, not as a warning, not as advice, just as truth, spoken quietly. They loved you, not in a shallow way, not in a careless way, but in the kind of way that scared them. Because loving you meant showing up fully, and they were not ready to be seen that clearly. You carry a fire that asks for honesty, not loudly, but unmistakably. When you love with presence, with direction, with intention. And for someone still wrestling with themselves, that kind of love feels like standing in front of a mirror they were not prepared to face. So they hesitated, they pulled back. Not because they did not feel enough, but because they felt too much and did not know what to do with it. There were moments when they wanted to reach for you and didn't. Moments when silence felt safer than saying the wrong thing. Moments when pride stepped in and whispered that distance would protect them. But Aries, distance does not protect the heart. It only delays the lesson. They told themselves stories, that timing was off, that they needed space, that they would come back when things felt easier. But real connection is never easy. It asks for courage, and courage was the one thing they were still learning. So instead of stepping forward, they stayed quiet. Instead of choosing you clearly, they stayed half present. Instead of growing into the role your love required, they stayed where it felt familiar. And I want you to hear this part clearly, not emotionally, but truthfully. You were never asking for too much. You were asking for the right amount from the wrong version of them. That matters. Because somewhere deep inside, they knew it too. They felt it when you stopped explaining. When your energy shifted. When the fire in your voice softened, not because you cared less, but because you were done carrying the weight alone. That was the moment their heart and their fear collided. Love told them to stay. Fear told them they were not enough yet. And fear won, at least at the time. But fear does not erase love, it only buries it. And buried things eventually rise. Which is why this story is not finished. Not because they deserve another chance, but because you deserve the truth of what this connection really was. And as this realization continues to unfold inside them, as they begin to understand the cost of staying guarded, something shifts. The question is no longer whether they loved you. It is whether they are finally ready to become the person who could hold that love without running. And that realization changes the energy in ways you may already be sensing without knowing why. Stay right here with me, because the next movement of this story is not about words. It is about action. Aries, there is a weight settling in their chest now that no distraction can lift. Not panic, not drama, just the slow understanding that something precious slipped through their hands while they were looking the other way. Regret does not always announce itself. Sometimes it arrives as clarity, clear enough to hurt. They are beginning to see how often you gave without being asked. How often you showed up when they stayed undecided. How often you held space while they stayed guarded. And what hurts them the most is not what you said. It is what you didn't have to say. They see it now. The moments they could have stepped forward and chose comfort instead. The chances they had to invest and decided to wait. The way they let silence do damage because they believed time would always be on their side. Time never promises that. Aries, they know now that love doesn't wait for readiness. It responds to courage. And courage was the one thing they withheld. What breaks them open is watching you stand strong without them. Seeing you move through life with your head held steady, your light intact, your fire refined. They thought losing you would weaken you. Instead, it revealed you. And that realization cuts deeper than anger ever could. They are replaying scenes where you needed reassurance and received uncertainty. Where you reached out and felt distance instead of warmth. Where you were present and they were only half there. Aries, this is where the regret lives. Not in the loss itself, but in the awareness that the loss was avoidable. They know now you were not asking for perfection. You were asking for effort, consistency, a clear yes. They also know you would have met them halfway if they had only taken one step forward. And that is the thought they cannot escape. Because you did not leave loudly. You did not threaten. You did not demand. You simply stopped carrying what was never meant to be yours alone. That quiet withdrawal is what woke them up. It showed them how much you were doing behind the scenes. How much emotional labor you were holding to keep the connection alive. And now standing where they are, they understand something they didn't before. Love is not proven when everything feels easy. It is proven when it is time to step up. And fear says no. They said no. And they live with that now. Aries, this moment is not about punishment. It is about truth. They are finally seeing you not as someone who would always be there, but as someone they had to choose and failed to. That awareness changes them. Slowly. Deeply. And as this realization continues to settle, as regret reshapes their perspective, something else begins to surface. A question they can no longer ignore. What happens when you realize the value of something only after it's gone? Sit with that for a moment. Because the answer to that question is what pulls the next chapter into motion. And that chapter is already finding its way toward you. Aries, there is something they haven't fully forgiven themselves for yet. Not the ending, but the way it happened. Because deep down, they knew better. And still, they chose differently. There were moments when instinct whispered, slow down. Be honest. Show up clean. And they ignored it. Not because they wanted to hurt you, but because they did not want to sit with their own discomfort. So they blurred lines. They hesitated where clarity was needed. They made choices too fast or avoided choices altogether. It wasn't cruelty. It was fear wearing confidence. And Aries, you felt it before it broke. That subtle imbalance. That sense that something wasn't anchored. That quiet tension between what was said and what was done. You tried to understand. You tried to give space. You tried to trust the process. Until the moment came when the ground shifted without warning. One conversation, one action, one truth revealed too late, and everything collapsed. Not slowly, not gently, but all at once. That kind of collapse leaves a mark. It shakes belief. It rearranges the heart. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because staying would have required betraying yourself. And that choice changed you. What they didn't expect was how deeply that collapse would echo inside them. They thought they could move on quickly, distract themselves, rewrite the story. But the mind remembers what the ego tries to bury. Now in quiet moments, they replay the fall, not to blame you, but to understand themselves. They see where impulse overrode integrity, where avoidance replaced honesty, where they chose temporary relief over long-term connection. And Aries, this is the part most people never talk about. Self-sabotage does not feel like destruction when you are inside it. It feels like control, like protection, like staying safe, until the consequences arrive, until the silence sets in, until the absence becomes real. That is when the awakening deepens, because the collapse did not end the story. It exposed it. It forced them to look at patterns they had been repeating quietly for years. The way they pull away when something matters. The way they test love instead of trusting it. And the truth is, you were never meant to carry that weight. Your role was not to save them. It was to show them what real connection feels like. Sometimes, that lesson only lands after everything falls apart. Aries, the shock you felt was the same shock they are feeling now, just delayed. You walked through the fire first. They are only now reaching the heat. And as heavy as this sounds, there is something sacred in it. Because collapse clears illusion. It strips away false strength. It leaves only what is real. And what is real now is that they cannot unsee what they lost or why. That awareness is uncomfortable. But it is also transformative. So if the energy feels intense lately, if memories surface unexpectedly, if the past feels closer than it should, it is not because the wound reopened. It is because the truth is finishing its work. And as that truth settles, as the dust from the fall finally clears, a different kind of movement begins to form. One that does not come from fear but from understanding. And that shift is what quietly pulls the next chapter into view. Aries, there was a moment quiet enough to be missed when you stopped waiting. Not angrily, not dramatically. You simply shifted your weight back into your own life. You woke up and chose your day. You made plans without checking your phone first. You laughed without explaining yourself afterward. You rested without wondering if they would notice. That was the moment everything changed. Because when your energy stopped leaning forward, their world tilted. They felt it as a sudden absence, like reaching for something familiar and touching air instead. Like realizing the room had gone quiet only after the music stopped. Aries, your leaving was not loud. It was clean. And that is what unsettled them. They had grown used to your patience, to your understanding, to the way you held the space even when they were unsure. And when that space was no longer available, they did not know where to stand. Panic does not always look frantic. Sometimes it looks like confusion, like replaying conversations that no longer exist, like checking messages that never arrive. They began to notice things they once overlooked: your steadiness, your emotional maturity, the way you showed up consistently without asking for applause. Only now those qualities felt irreplaceable. You see, Aries, when you stepped away, you did not create distance. You created clarity. They started to see themselves through the mirror of your absence, their indecision, their inconsistency, their reluctance to grow when growth was required. And that reflection was uncomfortable. You were no longer there to soften the edges, to fill the gaps, to translate silence into understanding. So they sat with the truth alone. And the truth is this: you had outgrown the version of them that refused to meet you where you were. You did not abandon them. You honored yourself. That distinction matters. Because from where you stand now, you see things differently. You see the pattern, the pauses, the emotional immaturity you once tried to justify. And you are no longer willing to shrink your expectations to make someone else feel comfortable. That is strength, Aries. Quiet strength. The kind that does not need validation. What they feel now is the consequence of that strength, not punishment. Awareness. They realize you were not someone they could circle back to whenever it felt convenient. You were a presence, a force, a partner who deserved intention. And the fear that grips them is not about being alone. It is about knowing they may have missed their chance to meet you in the moment that mattered most. So if the energy feels charged lately, if you sense someone thinking of you without reaching out yet, if memories surface without invitation, it is because your absence is still teaching them. And as that lesson deepens, As their panic settles into understanding, something else begins to form. A realization that cannot be undone. That losing you was not a phase, it was a turning point. And what happens after that realization is not driven by fear anymore. It is driven by truth. Stay right here. Because the next movement is not about loss. It is about how being seen changes everything. Aries, there is a shift in how they see you now. Not emotional, not nostalgic, clear. You are no longer a memory they revisit when they feel lonely. You have become a reference point, a measure, a standard they didn't know they were setting until everything else fell short. When things quiet down for them, when the noise of daily life fades, it is your energy that settles in their chest. Not loud, not demanding, steady. You were the one who calmed them without trying to control them. The one who held space without asking them to be anything other than honest. The one who saw through their armor and didn't flinch. That kind of presence changes a person, and now they understand why no one else feels the same. It is not just attraction. It is recognition. You reflected them back to themselves without distortion. You showed them who they were when they were brave, and who they became when they were afraid. That mirror is not easy to replace. Aries, they crave you and they respect you at the same time, and that combination is rare. With you, they felt seen, but being seen also meant being accountable, and that scared them more than they ever admitted. They know now that your fire was never chaotic, it was clarifying. It burned away excuses, it illuminated truth, it demanded presence, and that is why they pulled back, not because they didn't feel enough, but because they felt exposed. Now looking back, they see it clearly. They compare every connection to you, not intentionally, not consciously. It just happens. The conversations feel lighter elsewhere. The connection feels flatter. The depth feels missing. And in those moments, they realize something quietly devastating. You didn't just love them. You elevated them. You made them more aware, more grounded, more real. That is not something you stumble upon twice. Aries, this is the kind of realization that doesn't fade with time. It deepens. Because admiration is not built on fantasy. It is built on truth. They admire your strength because they witnessed it up close. Your boundaries because they felt them shift. Your self-respect because they saw what happened when you chose it. And somewhere inside them, a sentence keeps repeating. I should have stepped up, not later, not someday. Then, that thought doesn't torment them, it humbles them, and humility changes how love moves. If you feel them thinking of you lately, if their energy brushes yours unexpectedly, if your name surfaces in quiet moments, it is because admiration has weight. It pulls memory forward. It bends time inward. But Aries, this is where the story becomes important for you. Because being irreplaceable does not mean being available. You are not here to prove your worth again. You are not here to shrink so someone else feels safe. You are here as the standard you set by choosing yourself. And as this truth settles fully into them, as admiration turns into clarity, a question begins to form. What does it take to approach someone you now see as the one you should not have lost? That question does not stay theoretical for long. Because awareness, when it reaches this depth, always seeks movement. And that movement is already beginning to take shape. Aries, there is a restlessness growing inside them now. Not the kind that looks impulsive on the outside. The kind that tightens quietly, day after day, thought after thought. At first, they tell themselves to wait, to observe, to give it time. They watch from a distance. They notice your absence in places it used to fill. They replay your voice in moments when decisions feel heavy. They hesitate, not because they do not know what they feel, but because they are afraid of what action would require of them. Reaching out means accountability. It means showing up without armor. It means risking rejection instead of hiding behind uncertainty. So they sit with it, longer than they should, longer than feels comfortable. And Aries, you may feel this as a subtle pressure in the air, a sense that something is building, like heat before a storm breaks. Because eventually, holding everything in becomes harder than saying something imperfect. That is the turning point. It happens when the mind can no longer quiet the heart. When pride grows tired of pretending. When the image they carry of you no longer stays in the past but starts pulling at the present. They reach a moment where doing nothing feels unbearable. That is when the shift happens. Not dramatic at first, just decisive. A message drafted and erased, then written again. A sentence that carries more weight than they expected. An admission that surprises even them. Aries, this is not a casual check-in. This is not curiosity. This is someone realizing they either move now or live with the silence forever. So when they act, it comes quickly, directly, with emotion they have been containing for too long. You may feel it as urgency, as intensity, as a desire to explain, to clarify, to rebuild. They are no longer interested in half measures. They are thinking in terms of stability, consistency, long-term ground, not because they suddenly became someone else, but because awareness finally caught up with feeling. And here is where your energy matters most. Because Aries, you are not waiting at the door. You are standing in your own life. That changes the dynamic completely. Their movement is fueled by realization. Yours is guided by clarity. You will notice the difference in the tone, in the timing, in the intention behind their words. This is not about proving anything to you. It is about showing up as someone who understands what they almost lost. And yet, even as this energy rushes forward, there is something steady underneath it. A quiet question forming in you. Not will they come back, but what do you want now? Because when someone approaches you from a place of truth instead of fear, the choice is no longer about longing. It is about alignment. So if you feel the air shifting, if the silence feels charged instead of empty, if your intuition stays alert without feeling anxious, it is because movement is already in motion. Not reckless, not chaotic, but inevitable. And as that movement draws closer, another layer of this story prepares to reveal itself. One that has nothing to do with them chasing, and everything to do with what happens when honesty meets the fire you now carry. Stay right here. The next moment asks something deeper of you. Aries, this is the point where the energy stops pushing and starts asking. Not them asking you, life asking you. Because when someone finally sees you clearly, when they arrive with awareness instead of excuses, the question is no longer about timing or chemistry or history. It becomes about truth. You have walked far enough now to know the difference between someone returning and someone arriving differently. And that matters. Some Aries listening to this will feel a gentle opening in the chest. A sense that something can be healed, not erased, but understood, held with care, transformed into something steadier than before. Others will feel a quiet exhale, a release. The relief of knowing you no longer need to revisit a door you already closed with grace. Both responses are right, because closure is not failure, and reunion is not reward. They are simply different forms of honesty. You do not owe your heart to anyone who only learned its value after you stopped offering it freely, and you also do not have to punish someone who truly did the work to meet you where you stand now. This is where intuition speaks, softly, without urgency, without fear. It will not shout. It will feel like calm. Aries, notice how your body responds when you imagine opening that door again, and notice how it responds when you imagine leaving it closed. One will feel grounded. The other will feel tight. That is your answer. You are not here to chase clarity. You are here to recognize it. If they return, let them arrive without performance, without pressure, without promises spoken too quickly. Let actions carry the truth. And if they do not, know this. You were never abandoned. You were redirected. You did not lose love. You refined it. There is strength in the way you chose yourself without bitterness, without spectacle, without needing to be understood by everyone. That strength changes what you attract next. Whether the next chapter includes them or introduces someone new, the foundation is already different. Because you are different. You no longer wait to be chosen. You choose alignment. You no longer explain your worth. You live it, and the universe responds to that frequency without force. So as this story settles, as the energy comes to rest, trust that nothing meaningful was wasted. Every moment taught you something about courage, about boundaries, about the kind of love that honors who you are becoming. Aries, stand right here. In this knowing, you are not at an ending, you are at a point of authorship. And whatever comes next will meet you not because you chased it, but because you finally stood still in your truth. Aries, you did not lose them. They are the one learning how to live without the fire you once gave so freely. Aries, before you click away, hear this. What you just listened to was not about them coming back. It was about you remembering who you are. Because the moment someone realizes your value is never as powerful as the moment you stop questioning it. If they return to a version of you that no longer waits, no longer overextends, no longer shrinks to keep love comfortable. And if they don't, nothing is missing. That door did not close to punish you. It closed to protect what you are becoming. Aries, you are not behind. You are not late. You are not forgotten. You are standing at a turning point where love meets self-respect and only one path continues forward. Take a breath. Let that truth land. If this message reached you, there is a reason. Your intuition already knows it. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments what part of this story felt like it was written just for you. Your voice matters here, and if this space feels safe, if it feels real, subscribe and stay with us. This channel is for Aries who are done repeating cycles and ready to move with clarity. Trust yourself, the journey is not ending. The next message is already forming, and when it arrives, you will be ready to hear it.